Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coaches Corner Health. We are so excited that you are here. Coach Andy and I are here because we want to talk to you really about another area around relationships, right? Seeking to understand. And this is something really important, I think, because I brought this topic to Andy a little while ago. I had heard on just a room I was on in Clubhouse, some people talking about how men have a specific way of how they communicate around specific things that come to them when they're trying to problem solve, where they're saying men are doing it from a place of logic and women do it from a place of emotion. So we're going to get into that. My name is Leslie Gadet, and I am a mindset and emotional awareness coach for women. I help my clients around emotions as it pertains to mindset, especially allowing them to learn about being self-aware, how important that is so that they can take back their control over that emotional time when something happens. And I love what I do. So, Andy, tell us about you.
I'm Coach Andy, the unconditional coach, also known sometimes as the midnight coach. I deal with guys in their darkest issues. Actually, I'm dealing with guys and girls now. There are ladies in my coaching. I'm not sure, coaching group, I guess it's called. My clientele, in their darkest times, in when they're going through some really hard stuff. And most of the time, it's because they're dealing with some version of control issues, either a lack of control or an overabundance of control by themselves or someone else. And I just have a short victory to share. Because of the work that I've been doing, one of my clients was able to get sober after 10 years of drinking.
Oh, how wonderful.
That's pretty incredible. He's been sober for almost 3 weeks now, and I'm pretty excited to see where this goes from here.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations for both of you.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for his results. It's been awesome. Trying to work with a guy while he's under the influence has been an interesting adventure, I promise.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun. So anyway, how guys approach issues or problems versus how ladies do. Do we seek to solve or do we seek to understand? Now, one of the ways that I wanted to have this conversation is to address the idea of guys and girls doing things differently. That men and women actually don't always do things differently the way we stereotype them. What is more accurate to say, I would say, is the masculine energy versus the feminine energy. That is a much more accurate statement. Masculine tends to focus more on the logic, tends to focus more on the problem solving. What is the problem? What is the solution we can offer to that problem? And I say masculine energy because I know lots of women with plenty of masculine energy. And I know many men who have a shortage of masculine energy.
Okay.
And conversely, the feminine energy tends to focus on the understanding or emotions or mental health of the problem, mental and physical health of the problem. They tend to nurture. They tend to care more about the why and the how versus the what do we do to solve this. And again, I know lots of men who have plenty of feminine energy and lots of ladies who have a shortage of that. So I don't believe it's so much about men and women, but I do believe that how we identify men and women is a part of the equation. The masculine energy and the feminine energy are definitely what I would reframe that statement from how a lot of people talk about it, from instead of men and women to masculine and feminine. And otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty accurate statement. I'm not willing to go boldly enough to say all feminine or all masculine, but I'm going to agree that it's a vast majority for sure that work that way.
Yeah, no, I
So
love how you got that too, because
yeah,
again, I love how you made that distinction because a lot of the time we get thrown into this box. Oh, you're a male, so this is how you're acting, and this is how you feel. This, if you're a woman, this is how you act, this is how you feel. And I think because we stereotyped each sex that way, that we're not allowing for like you say, some women are stronger in their masculine energy, how they lead. And so it's learning for them to like lean into their feminine energy a little bit more, to be softer in specific situations. And the same thing, vice versa, for men who have a more dominant masculine energy and have to learn also about leaning into the feminine, and vice versa if they have a more feminine energy. And it doesn't mean that they're effeminate, it just means that they are more, I think, emotionally
Right.
driven. And so because women, I mean, I feel like emotions come from our feminine side more so
Yeah.
than our masculine energy. And so
Yeah.
I think that when the vice versa, whichever sex it is, men or women, if they're coming from that feminine energy, it's learning to adapt to that masculine energy when they need to. And I know, because I really lead more from my feminine energy, and so it's just
Yeah.
learning to be able to encompass my masculine energy when I need to, which is like, being that assertive voice, doing those things
Right.
that, in that energy. So I love how you brought that to the forefront.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's been an interesting experience throughout my life because I've had a strong both feminine and masculine energy, and I had the harmful versions of each. So rather than the nurturing feminine, I had the needy feminine. And
Okay.
rather than the commanding masculine, I had the bossy masculine, the toxic, what we would call toxic.
Mhm.
So I had to learn, not only was masculine bad, but so was feminine. Not only was masculine good, but so was feminine.
Mhm.
I had to learn how each type of energy can be both harmful and helpful. There is no innate judgment in masculine or feminine energy. There isn't one is good, one is bad. Although the way some people talk about it, it comes across that way. Some people, there's lots of guys who won't talk about feminine energy because it sounds weak to
Mhm.
guys. There's a lots of ladies who won't talk about masculine energy because it sounds toxic, right? And what I've had to learn is that that's exactly not true unless that's what you make it, what you use it for. It depends on whether you use your powers for good or for evil, right? Whatever powers you have. But yeah, it's the concept of masculine and feminine energy. Like I said, I've had strong both, and now that I've spent a few years figuring out what the positive versions, what the helpful versions, what the intended versions, what I intend to come from each of those kinds of energy, I'm able to be very, very nurturing, very kind, very compassionate, loving, caring, all of those wonderful feminine characteristics that I crave so much. I'm able to be all of those. And I can level it up a little bit, sit up straight, and go, all right, mister, this is how things are going to go. Right? And I can do that. And I can change between both back and forth. I can wear a scruffy face or I can clean shave, right? I can go either way because I've learned how I don't like each energy. So then what that allowed me to do is also learn then what I do like and how to use them in a way that I do like. So to the conversation, how men and women approach situations, I've learned that there are some situations where logic is most useful, and I'll embrace the masculine energy, and with it comes often the commanding personality and the powerful presence. And I've learned that there are some situations where being kind and nurturing and understanding is more powerful. So I've learned to soften the voice, soften the speech, add more space between the words, and just be softer.
Mhm.
Not weak, not not any of those things that a lot of guys associate with negative feminine energy. Um, Still strong, still the commanding energy in the room, but soft and kind and gentle, right?
Okay.
And that's what I learned. Unfortunately, that isn't the reputation that we give both genders as a society. I mean, you and I often do, but
Mhm.
as a society, that's not the reputation we give. So tell me what your experience is with men and women, or masculine energy and feminine energy, and their problem-solving abilities.
Well, before I get to that, I just want to talk a little bit more about what you just unpacked. One of the things I think that a couple things came to mind for me. One was, and we can get into both of them. The first one was expectations, because you talked about being needy and demanding versus being nurturing and soft and giving, right? And nurturing. And so I think that comes with the expectations. I think that's what happens when you have a negative around your whatever energy that you are embodying at the moment to get your own way. And again, that becomes your what you want. It's your expectation. We've talked about expectations before. They're I inclusive. They're not we. They're I inclusive. They're we exclusive, right?
Yes.
And so, and then when you talk about how embracing whether it's your feminine or your masculine energy, it's not a sign of weakness. If either way, it's not a sign of. And I think this is something that we need to talk about more too. But it's not a sign of being weak or trying to be the boss or trying to like put
Right.
your way on someone. You're still within your power, but I think it's how you come across. You can be more commanding in a very masculine way that gets what you need, but also it also serves the people that are in the same room
Right.
with you or they're
Right.
sharing the same space with you. But I think a lot of people get, like you were saying, they get a little bit nervous, especially if you talk to men or even talk to women too. If you talk, I think it goes both ways. You talk to men or women about having embracing their feminine energy, the first word probably that comes up is it's a show of weakness. It's a sign of weakness. And I think only now they've started really talking more about it in mainstream about negative and feminine energies and what that means. But there's still, I think, a huge percentage of the population that doesn't know what that is. I mean, there's still a huge population that really doesn't fully understand what coaching is and what we do and how we serve
Right.
that way. Because coach for the longest time, I've talked about this, is usually the coach who's coaching basketball or the baseball team or the hockey team or whatever that is, some type of sport, or
That's
someone's
right.
coaching somebody through I don't know, you have singing coaches or whatever, if they're considered the same thing, but whatever that coach is, acting coach, that is what most people have attributed coach to for so long, that now in the mainstream has become more life coach. Okay, well, what is that? And so I think because we understand that, I think it's something that we could talk more about um, around these energies. And I know you asked me a question. My own experience has really been that I lean more to my feminine energy. Very girly. I just love being a woman. And so I'm very emotional. I do wear my heart on my sleeve. I do have, like, my emotions have at times had gotten the best of me. And I think that's why I coach around what I do. It's
Mhm.
because I wanted to get a better understanding about that. So for me, I think embodying my masculine energy, sometimes I think has scared me, just because uh, society says when a woman is bold, when a woman is strong in her space, there's like negative things that are said about her, rather than saying, like, if a man is that way, he's strong, he's a community leader. When a woman's that way, it's like, well, she's coming across too bold, she's coming across too strong, she's not being very kind. They don't want to be around people like that. And so that's, I think, society has this rule that they've created on who is allowed to be feminine and who they've allowed to be masculine. And
Yeah.
so now, as I said, it's in our space, yours and mine, what we do. But how do we get that mainstream so that people can embrace it without feeling like, you're being, someone says, I want to embrace my feminine energy more and my masculine energy, without it coming across like someone thinking that you're totally lost your marbles, because that's
Right.
what people might think.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it to answer the question, how do we bring that more mainstream? I think there is one, as you were talking, that remember there's a big difference in what society expects from men and women in relationships versus in business.
Mm-hmm.
A strong, commanding man up in front of a crowd on a stage running a business is respectable in most scenarios, not all, but in most scenarios. A strong, commanding woman in the same situation can be and is becoming more respectable. Like that is something that is changing. But a strong, commanding man or woman in a relationship is almost disrespectful almost every time. Society thinks of that as a bad thing almost every time. So how do we start getting this mainstream? Well, we need to start talking about the difference between relationships and business, about how when to use each energy, how to use each energy, what they're for. When I'm sitting down talking to my partner, I don't want to be putting on my stage voice and commanding and including everybody in the. That isn't how relationships work. I might want to still have some self confidence. I might want to still have some of my more quiet masculine energy that gives me the strength and confidence to stand firm when outside forces are trying to influence our family. That's important. But to my partner, it's in a relationship, a feminine energy is far more useful, far more important. In a relationship, from both sides, men and women, and even when they're same sex, especially when they're same sex, it's important to have that feminine energy because that's what gives us the emotional connection, the
Mm-hmm.
the, the ability to understand, the ability to care, the ability to see things from the other person's point of view. That feminine energy is important in a relationship. The masculine is important to protect and provide for that relationship. But when I'm talking to my partner, the feminine energy is far more useful and far more important. The masculine energy is more important in a relationship, not when I'm talking to my partner, but when I'm acting for my partner, around my partner, with my partner. Um, Somebody attacks my family, verbally, mentally, socially. Masculine energy comes out from either the man or the woman. It's useful to have masculine energy, but not when I'm talking to my partner, whether I'm a man or a woman. Whereas in business, it's more important to have more masculine energy with a strong dose of feminine energy. Relationships tend to be a little more focused on the emotions. Business tends to be a little more focused on the logic, but not too much. You still need to have some emotions even in business. So it's understanding how that dichotomy, how those two types of energy can interact in different situations, right? Um, there are different ways we can interact with those things, and how we can make this mainstream is by talking about it like you and I are, like you and I do, um, and by coaching people, honestly, by helping people figure out what their masculine and feminine energy is, by helping people see the and I won't even say the good and the bad, but the versions of each energy that is getting them the results they want, and the versions that are preventing them from getting the results they want. Right? Whether being needy is getting you what you want, or being nurturing is getting what you want. Whether being commanding is getting what you want, or whether being demanding is getting you what you want. Whatever way is going to get you what you want, let's work on that. Right? We as coaches don't often bring in agendas to our relationships with our clients. We usually pick up what their agenda is and help them do that. So let's figure out what their agenda is. Let's help people. Let's use our strong feminine coaching energy to understand where they're coming from, which is what you and I do, so that we can help them get what they want. And as we help them get what they want, they'll have a better idea of what it is they want. So, how can we make this mainstream? By doing what you and I already do a lot more than we are. That's it.
Yeah. No, and I agree. And I think part of it too, though, is if anything, if I could impart anything to anyone, would really be just allow yourself to be open to something different. just
Yes.
to hear it, to listen, and then become resourceful and seek your answers. Like, I'm not saying that you need to take everything I say as truth, as your truth. But if I impart something to you around masculine energy, around feminine energy, because I'm saying this will help you in this scenario, and asking your opinion and getting you in this conversation, and I think as a human being, because we are naturally curious, would be for you to go and seek that information, because we're talking about this, but it doesn't mean that we made this up. This is already
Correct.
out there in the mainstream. This is what people are talking about. This is how people really are, but they're not owning it for whatever fears, again, around being seen as weak, maybe being seen as, too demanding, maybe not being seen as kind. And I think that can be really hard, especially too with the way the world is today. It's hard now because we are living in such a virtual reality, and there's not a lot of interacting, or people aren't really, well, I guess in parts of the world they are getting out and seeing each other more, but I don't think it's the same. I don't
Right.
think the dynamic is the same when you go out into public. I know a lot of people who are fearful of that. And so it's then in that situation is there is a way to use either energy
Yeah.
to help each other. And so I feel like men and women come from two different places. It was fascinating for me to listen to that conversation, that when I first brought this topic to you, and they were talking about how men who they seek to understand in a conversation to fix a problem through what's logically the answer, not looking from an emotional place, whereas women will respond to something more from an emotional place.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're embodying more of your feminine energy, that might be true for you. And maybe if you're embodying more of your masculine energy, the logical part might be true for you too. Again, it doesn't have to mean that you're a man or a woman and it's set in stone that that's the way it is.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I actually brought that up with a couple of clients after you mentioned it to me, just as experiments. I said, "Are you seeking to understand? Or are you seeking to solve the problem?" And that question has come up so much in society that we now know the right answer. We're supposed to seek to understand. So everybody I asked, "Oh, I'm seeking to understand." I mean, I'm seeking to understand so that she can fix herself. What? That's not
There's a
understanding.
yeah.
I'm seeking to understand so I can figure out how to fix myself. No, that's not understanding. Oh yeah, I'm seeking to understand. I want to know what the problem is. No, that's not understanding. Um, Seeking to understand doesn't care about the solution. Um, and the way I explained it to a couple of clients is when we seek to understand with feminine energy, we seek to feel and hear their thoughts and emotions. We do not care where the problem came from, whose fault it was, or why it can be fixed or how it can be fixed. We don't care. When we're seeking to understand, all we're trying to do is take off my shoes and put on yours. To walk in your shoes a moment, or a while, or a week, or whatever the case may be. All I'm trying to do in a conversation to understand is to hear and understand where my partner or the other person I'm talking to is coming from. One of the reasons you and I have such great videos is because that is our primary concern. We sometimes have to remind ourselves that there's a problem here we're trying to solve. We're not just understanding. Right?
Absolutely.
We do understand.
Mhm.
That's what our purpose is. I mean, it's a natural characteristic of coaches. Right? That's what we do. And there isn't a solution involved. Now, that doesn't mean there can't be a solution involved. It just means it isn't part of this conversation. As a matter of fact, the best solutions come from existing understanding conversations. So if we get into the conversation just to understand, Then we come back to the conversation later to find a solution. And we have enough understanding conversations that we can both agree, this is who you are, this is who I am, this is how I feel, this is how you feel, this is how you think, this is how I think. If we can both agree on all versions of those questions, then we can come to the conversation of a problem with a solution and say, yeah, that's what we can do. Because now we actually understand each other, where we're coming from. And when we don't do that, all we can do is solve a problem from my point of view, because I can't solve it from your point of view if I haven't even listened to what your point of view is. That's where a lot of guys go. And the reason I brought up the conversation of feminine versus masculine is because most of the deepest arguments that I have experienced or witnessed, both men and women are trying to solve the problem. You did this, I need you to quit. You don't do this, I need you to do it. And it doesn't matter, men or women, they both do it. And it's very much masculine energy that's doing that. It's not the kind, soft voice that's asking for those things. It's usually a very commanding, demanding, and not always loud, but definitely assertive voice. It's the tone of voice, the come from. So that's why I brought it into a matter of energies, because it is more about, when the woman is being feminine, she can hear him. When the man is being masculine, he can't hear her. And the same goes the other direction. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, and I think I agree with you, because I think a lot of the things that I talk to people about is, I don't feel understood. He doesn't understand me. He doesn't listen to me. He's not hearing me. And it's really, again, it's seeking just to understand how the other person feels helps you find that solution somewhere down the road. But
Yeah.
at the moment, you're not at the same time trying to fix the problem. You're trying to imagine and understand what the other person's trying to tell you. So that's when you stop and you listen, right? And I
I
think
just wanted to interrupt for just 1 second. What you said, women often say, they don't understand me. They don't listen. They don't hear me. I hear men saying exactly those words.
Oh,
So it's
I'm
not different.
sure. No, I'm sure that is the case as well, for sure. I
Yeah.
think it's just, I think a lot of, and I don't really hear a lot of men telling me this per se, because I don't
Yeah.
work with men, but I'm sure that is exactly the case. Because why? Because we're human. And why? Because we all have emotions. We all feel. Just because you're male doesn't mean you don't feel.
Right.
It just means that, unfortunately, through the way we've been brought up, it's either you're masculine and you should embody masculine energy, or you're feminine and you should embody feminine energy. And so when they have something negative to say about a woman who leans into her masculine energy, or they say something negative about a man leaning into his feminine energy, that's where we have to change the narrative. But
Yes.
so, yeah, as I was saying, there are women who I've spoken to who have just said, he's not listening, he doesn't hear me, he doesn't respect me. I've even said the same thing, and that's because I've learned over time. Part of it comes from not just yourself wanting to feel, as a woman, wanting to feel heard and understood. It's also being able to slow yourself down to hear and understand what he's trying to tell you. Because, again, when they say men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and it's like we speak two different languages, we're speaking the same language. We're articulating it differently.
Right.
So it's the same thought pattern, but it's just coming out different, if that makes sense. And so I think when we learn to, as women, to say, okay, I want to be seen, heard, and understood. But in order for that to happen, I also have to do the same for my partner, because that allows me to say, oh, okay, he's telling me this. Before I get my hairs all up in the back of my neck and get so emotional around what's being said, it might not even be what I'm already expecting it to be. It could be something completely different. It's just the way he has his words, how he expresses it. And so it's just learning that it takes time, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that just because a guy comes to you and he might be leading from masculine when in his conversations with you, that he doesn't feel, he's not trying to explain something to you in a way that isn't trying to be kind, but it's just he hasn't learned to maybe embrace his feminine side to be able to come at a softer approach, and vice versa. You have a woman may not have allowed, and vice versa. It could be whichever sex
Yeah.
is talking to the other. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Whomever feels that they're not being seen, heard, or understood has to also understand this as well. That in
Yeah.
order to be felt, to be seen, heard, and understood, you must be able to do the same for the other person and
Yeah.
not make it all one sided. And I think that's when people can understand that and lean into that, where relationships I feel could be healthier because then they're
Yeah.
talking, they're communicating from that place.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And how we do that, why we do that, why we want to listen to the other person. Most conversations that I know that end up in an argument, one side or the other, the man or the woman, is looking to be understood. And usually the other side says, yeah, I understand you, but I want to be understood. Well, the but deletes the whole damn thing. As soon as you say, yeah, but I want to be understood, then you're not listening anymore. And you probably weren't to start with. Although you and I have cut each other off on occasion, we have never, or at least not that I remember, ever felt not listened to by the other person. We do hear each other. I remember you commenting a year ago when our relationship was still reasonably fresh, when our partnership was still reasonably fresh, that you felt that I was listening to you and understanding you, and that you felt that you understood me, and that I agreed. I remember having this conversation a long time ago. And what doesn't happen in most partnerships is the person doesn't go into the conversation with the purpose of just understanding. If both people go into the relationship, into the conversation, into the whatever the situation is, with the only goal is to understand them, then it won't be so much about, do I feel understood? And I promise you that maybe not the first conversation, but after a little bit of practice, you will start to feel understood. If both of you go in the conversation trying to understand the other person, what you want, and it isn't always the case, but this is one of those cases where you give what you want to receive, you have to give it first. This is one of those situations where if you want to be understood, you have to be willing to understand first. And not just understand, but let the conversation be one-sided in their favor. If they're not capable of understanding you yet, and you are, then let them have that until such time as they are able to. Because I promise you, each of you trying to be understood is not going to let anybody be understood. And so, yeah, it is a matter of, this is one of those situations where you give what you want to receive. You give what you want to get. When you give it enough, then the possibility, even likelihood exists that you'll get it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too is like it comes down to expectations again, right? Because going into a conversation, if you're already expecting that you're going to get something out of it, meaning it's going to go in your favor, then you're going to lose what you could actually receive from the conversation. In other words, there could be some really great nuggets that you get out of the conversation because you allow yourself to just go in with an open mind and let the other person share, and you might learn something, even learning something about yourself too. And I think that's
Yeah.
just part of it, but it's really interesting to me that we still in this, I don't know, I'm going to call it post coaching phenomenon, because there's like, oh gosh, there's been an explosion of coaches since
Yes.
COVID, especially. And so, because of that, that means that there's a lot of people out there who are saying, I understand how to help people. And I'm not saying that they don't, but part of helping people also means that when I go into a conversation, and I'm sure you're the same way with your clients, you're not going in with an expectation of what you're going to hear from them. You're going into and what you're going to share with them. It's
Right.
you have an idea around it, obviously, because you've been working with this person, or you have some information on where to get started. But
Yep.
it's still going in with the open mind to allow that person to share, because when they're coming to a coach, when someone goes to a coach, whether they go to a therapist, a coach, your doctor, even whoever you go to talk to, it's usually because you need to be heard, you need to be understood what it is that you're feeling and you're thinking. And so when you enter into a conversation with somebody, that's, I think, the gift that you can not only give to them but yourself, because then you can start to really actually grow. You become a better listener. You start to see things in a different perspective. You allow yourself to do that because you're open. And I think nowadays, like I was saying, post coaching phenomenon of all these coaches out there in the world, that we still are going to have these conversations still around the masculine feminine energy, because it's still deemed in society that it's one or the other. One is good and one is not, depending on what sex you are. To be feminine for a woman is good. To be masculine for a woman is, I mean, masculine energy is not good for a woman. To have masculine energy
Right.
for a man is good, but to have feminine energy for a man is not. And so that's where we need
I
to change
agree.
the narrative, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to get into that conversation because I have a theory. Now, I haven't studied it a whole bunch, but I have a theory as to why that is. And that is because the perception of masculine and feminine energy isn't accurate. The perception of masculine energy is closer to the negative. There's a lot more conversation around toxic masculinity than there is about any other version of masculinity. I mean, 20 times more conversation around toxic masculinity. You can go into YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, almost anywhere. You look up masculinity, and 9 out of 10 posts are going to have something to do with toxic masculinity. So, masculinity is seen as bad in both men and women. And God forbid the woman who decides to be more masculine, because all anybody's ever going to see is toxic versions of it, no matter how confident, caring, and understanding and inclusive she is. In certain professional situations, men can still get away with it as long as they're very careful about the toxicity, and even most of those still get accused of being toxic a lot of the time. So masculinity is seen as toxic. Femininity, on the other hand, is seen as sexuality. When a lot of men hear, you should embrace your feminine side, their response is, I'm not wearing a dress. Nobody's asking you to put on a dress, dress up like a woman, or become sexual the way a woman is sexual. Nobody's asking to do that. I mean, really, nobody's asking you to live in a female body. We're not even asking you to put on pretty clothes or wear pink or any of that stuff. What we're asking you to do is feel your emotions, share your emotions. But a lot of guys feel or hear, when they hear femininity, they hear feminism or yeah, they hear femininity, not feminine or energy. They hear femininity as in I'll wiggle a little bit when I walk, or I'll, act a little more feminine. And that's not what we're talking about here. Um, and it's okay for a woman to hear feminine energy and act a little more feminine, a little more girly, a little more sexy, a little more, all those things. It's expected. So when we're talking about women and feminine energy, if a woman hears that as a sexuality thing, she's not going to feel entirely bad about it, although some do. Many do. They don't, nobody wants the feminine energy we're talking about to be about sexuality. but almost everybody assumes that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Just as nobody wants the masculine energy we're talking about to be about toxic, although everybody assumes, or most people assume that it is. So I think the problem is how we identify masculine and feminine energy. We're talking about feminine energy from a place of emotions, connection, compassion, nurturing, healing. None of that's sexual. I mean, trust me, it's not sexual. I mean, it's sexy in an emotional kind of connection kind of a way. It's connecting in a relationship kind of a way. And we're not talking about masculine in the bossy, get out of my face, do it my way kind of a way. We're talking about masculine in a creative, safe, protective, um, assured kind of a way, where men and women can feel like they can do what they know they can do, like they can be what they know they can be, like they can help who they know they can help. That's what masculine energy looks like. And I think we've just corrupted it too much. Movies, music, media, they've corrupted. Feminine women have hot asses. No, they don't. I mean, some of them do, sure, but that's not what feminine energy means. Any more than masculine men scream a lot, yell a lot. Nope.
Yeah.
Some do, but that's not what it means.
Well, as you were talking, I was actually Googling a movie. I remember they did this like in 1991, this movie called Switch. Do you remember it with Ellen
Yep.
Barkin and Jimmy Smits? And I think they were actually onto something then because they were looking at what it would be like for a man he came back as a woman
Yep.
and what it felt like to be in a woman's body, in the way she felt about herself. And it was quite comical, but it was, I think, the first attempt to get an understanding of what it's like to be feminine, to be a woman.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, no, it's funny how we're talking. Sorry, my eyes got something in it, but it's funny how we're talking about how we're still talking about how it isn't a good. It's not considered a positive. I mean, it's positive for women to be feminine, but it's not considered a positive talking about feminine energy. And and I don't know, like or masculine and energy. And I didn't really fully understand it myself. And I'm going to be like transparent about that because in the beginning of my coaching, I wasn't really fully understanding of it. I met a coach. She really led mostly, her and I were the opposites. She led mostly from her masculine energy. I lead mostly from my feminine. And so was learning about myself in interacting with her.
Yeah.
And, there are times we've become really close friends and she's a sweetheart. But in the beginning, I was like, I don't understand this. Like, I don't understand why. And I started learning about and taking a little closer look at like the differences and realize, oh, okay, so there's this energy that's not necessarily because you're masculine or you're feminine. It's just an energy. Like, what does that look like? Masculine being assertive and problem solving and looking for the solution rather than getting emotion, like taking the emotion out of it and looking specifically to fix it. And women are looking about how I feel, like and it's mostly women that I have worked with, right? So I you've worked with men and you understand that, but they talk about, okay, well then you get the feminine energy and so that might lead to like the nurturing and the empathy and the compassion, the emotions come into play. But that's all positive. But I think when you take a step back and you look outside, what other people are attaching to it is that they're saying that there are real negative things that they want to attach to these two types of beings
Yes.
that don't belong. Like, you don't
Right.
need, there are negatives to emotions. When people are being negative, that's emotion based. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming from a masculine or a feminine
Correct.
energy. I don't agree with that. I don't think anyway. That's my own
I
personal
agree.
opinion.
I
But
agree.
I could be wrong, but I'm just saying that's just my opinion from what I've witnessed, what I've seen, what I've watched over time. I think really when anyone is coming from, whether you're angry, whatever those emotions that you are leading with, I don't necessarily feel that anyone really should put a band sorry say that it's coming from a negative, sorry, from a masculine or feminine energy. I think that that should be completely kept separate, because those are energies that we use to move through life, how we interact with people. I think that when we want to talk about those other things where we become needy, we become demanding, we use our emotions, I don't I don't know. I mean, maybe it is coming from the masculine and the feminine a little bit, but I really would love to be able to keep them separate, because
Yeah.
I think that if we can just look at it from the emotion base, I think that
Yeah.
would make people feel a lot better too, when they would think, oh, so I don't have to attach I'm being overly emotional because I'm feminine, or
Right.
I'm a man who is more leaning into his emotions, so I'm considered feminine. No, let's take that out of the equation. It's just your emotions, because
Yeah.
you were born with emotions, so you're
Yeah.
okay. And I would
Yeah.
love to be able to change the narrative around that, and then have people be able to embrace using the energy around masculine and feminine to move through life, to be able to learn to understand, to seek to understand, so that they enter every conversation with an open mind to really hear what the other person has to say. They might learn something, and then actually the answer that they thought they were going to go in with could actually change, because they've allowed themselves to say, you know what, I have no expectation, let me hear you. And it's
Right.
like, oh, that's what you mean. Because now I'm walking, like you said, I'm stepping into your shoes. And oh, that's not exactly what I was thinking before I came into this conversation. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I agree. I agree completely. There's so many thoughts that I had while you were speaking. Um,
that usually
the
happens with you, Andy.
we do that to each other, do we not? You're speaking, I'm thinking, I'm thinking, I'm speaking, you're thinking. Yeah, that's what we do.
But we
It's
hear
why
each
our
other. We
we
hear each
do,
other. Yes.
we do. That's exactly it. You were talking about there is the negative connotations that we attach to the masculine and feminine energy, and I completely agree that although there might be some attachment to maybe when the feminine energy was wounded, this thing happened, or when the masculine energy was wounded, this thing was happening. But they're wounds. They're not attached to the masculine or the feminine or the anything else. They are wounds. Let's heal those.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've had trauma, you've had wounding, you've had damage, you've had experiences. Let's heal those. Let's give you the experiences you want without changing the actual history of what happened. We can do that, and that doesn't have to have anything to do with the masculine and feminine energy. It's not about that. It's about wounds, right? You're not coaching women because you hate masculine energy, and I'm not coaching men because I hate feminine energy. That was never part of the equation. You know, we both heal both masculine and feminine energy. We heal wounds. We help people change their lives. We help people find what they're looking for, get what they want. I don't care if you're masculine or feminine. That's not what I'm here for. And understanding where a person might be coming from, whether it's the masculine or feminine energy, when they're approaching a problem, that can be helpful. But when we're using those to identify their issues, not so helpful, right? If we hear somebody say, "So what's the details? How can I solve this problem?" Well, you can clearly understand that's a masculine energy. Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman speaking, that's a masculine energy. But you don't have to then go into how they're wounded and how they're corrupted and how they're toxic and how they're blah, blah. Who the hell cares? They're coming from their masculine energy. Let's just understand that for now. We don't have to understand all the deep stuff. That's what coaches do. That's what therapists do. That's what doctors do. Leave it to us. This is what we're trained in. What you can do is you can just understand that when they're being logical, when you're being logical, you're using your masculine energy. And that's great if what you're trying to do is solve a problem. If what we're trying to do is connect with another human being, then what we want is feminine energy. We want to feel their emotions, to feel their feelings, to connect to their heart, to their soul. That's a feminine connection. That doesn't mean that masculine is not allowed. Masculine energy is what protects those connections, what strengthens those connections. Feminine energy creates them, nurtures them, builds them. Right? So it's just a matter of knowing which ones to use when. They're both appropriate, they're both useful, they're both helpful, they're both necessary in all human beings. And I think that's where I don't know about you, but that's where I wanted the conversation to go. They're both required, they're both important. I like talking to my guys about their masculine energy and seeing them and helping them to see that most of their wounds come from a wounded feminine that they won't even acknowledge exists. A lot of the guys that I talk to, I don't talk to a lot of guys who are angry because somebody beat them up. Most of the guys that I talk to either were doing the beating up or they were victimized by someone. And in almost all cases, it was their feminine that was wounded as well. They tried to be emotional at some point, and somebody hurt that, so they locked it away in a cage. And now they just use the masculine. So helping them heal that feminine when they won't even acknowledge it can be fun, I promise.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I think that is really just bottom line what we both want for anyone that we work with. I
Yes.
know when I started really getting a deeper understanding of the two energies and how we are moving through them, through my experiences with other people, whether it's men and women, it's made me really like evaluate, like thinking I could work with men if I choose to. Like there might come a time in my career as a coach that I might open up something, a space for men to feel like they can come in and talk with a woman, because sometimes men want to be able to speak with a female around specific issues that
Yep.
they might not really get that from someone else. I mean, I'm just
Yep.
saying that I would put that
Yep.
out there. For me, I think that is something that I am moving towards. But I chose to work with women only because I was coming from an understanding of being a woman, what
Yep.
it is like to be a woman with my emotions, and what this is what I work with women around emotions and things like that. And so, but at some point in my life, I know that that could change. And I think part of that is because I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversations, and I think we've built this really good friendship
Yep.
and allowed each other to learn about feminine and masculine together, like how we talk with each other about
Yep.
around these topics that we bring to the table. So I think that's kind of opened up my eyes more
Me too.
and allowed me to think outside of like what I was putting myself in this box, like only for women. Is
Right.
for me, it's like it's not. I can't look at it from, and I realize that I can't just look at coaching just working with women only, because women don't live alone. We are meant to be in relationships, regardless of who we are in a
Yeah.
relationship with. We are meant to be with each other, and so we're meant to be in a community, to be connected to one another. So if that means that I help when a woman go into her relationship with her significant other, that could mean that at some point I could be working with the
With him.
significant other,
Yeah.
helping him to understand her point of view from just my, and obviously wouldn't be sharing her information, but depending
Yeah.
on if I work with them together, with I work with them separately,
There's
that
different
I'll
dynamics for that.
keep
Yeah.
myself open to that. And I think it's just because as coaches, we grow and we learn about
Yeah.
things and we become more comfortable. And
Yeah.
I think that has come from building this connection with you for over a year now and few months now that we've had this channel. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's been
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. It's helped me, this channel and this relationship with you, this friendship that we've had, that we've built, has helped me to see, um, that there are women who can be feminine without, um, being soft, that can focus on the feminine energy without losing the masculine energy. Um, some of the women that I've experienced in the earlier parts of my life, I only saw the feminine energy or the masculine energy. I didn't see them in the same person.
Mm-hmm.
I could more easily see them in men because I am a man who has both energies. So I could recognize them in men. I actually the toughest people that I can relate to are men who are only masculine and refuse to admit to their feminine energy. I have absolutely no idea how to connect to those guys. They're the hardest ones. I can connect to women with, and I actually used to think I could connect to women better than men, until I realized that there's actually a whole bunch of men just like me who have
Mm-hmm.
both feminine and masculine energy and don't know how to use either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started realizing, wait a minute, I can help guys, because not all guys are just masculine balls of energy. There are many guys who have both. So that's been so this friendship that you and I've built has helped me to see how women can interact in a way that is, nurturing and feminine, and yet doesn't sacrifice their masculine to do so. You know, we're not speaking from a lot of emotion in these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
In these conversations, both of us are using primarily masculine energy. However, there's still plenty of compassion and caring and understanding and sharing that goes on in these conversations. We do play off each other. Yes, I do have thoughts while you're speaking.
So do I. So it's okay.
I love that you pointed that out because it's so much fun. Um, yes, I do, and I still care about what you're saying, right? Just as you care about what I'm saying. It's clear, and I don't think I have to point that out. I think all of our viewers who watch our videos can see that it's pretty clear that we care and listen to each other's words. Like, we do actually respond and play off each other. The conversation is actually conversations. They're not just you speaking and then I speak and then you speak and then I speak. That's not what it is. We don't have our own separate agendas that we're trying to teach each other and teach the world. We actually do talk off each other, and I love that. So that's, again, it's always been kind of an underlying theme of this channel, is to show people how a man and a woman can have conversations and not degrade into whatever those other conversations become.
Yeah. And you don't it's not like we have to be we have to agree on everything, because there's
No.
been times where we haven't agreed, but
Yeah.
it's okay. I think we both bring both energies to
Yes.
the conversations each time, and we understand we can bring that softness, we can bring that assertiveness, and we don't have to choose. And so that's what I like about it.
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed the time, but we are at the top of the hour
What a
again.
surprise!
This has been such an amazing conversation. I want to say thank you for those of you who either have watched it live or watching it back. If you like what you are watching, hearing, just press the like button and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. We are going to be going live again. I believe it's on the 23rd, correct? Yep, in 2 weeks from today is the 23rd, again
Yeah.
at 6 p.m. Uh, yeah, 6 p.m. Eastern
6 p.m.
Standard Time.
6 p.m.
So
Eastern. Yeah.
come join us. It's going to be a pretty cool conversation. I'm not going to give it away right now, but it's going to be a pretty cool conversation. Make sure that you tell your friends. Yeah, come join us. And if you have any comments or questions, pop them in the comment box there, and one of us will get back to you, I promise. I'm going to let you just take us home. Thank you so much for this conversation. I loved it.
Me too. Me too. And there isn't very far to go home. We have 25 seconds or 15 seconds or something like that. Yeah, no, this has been a wonderful conversation. I really do enjoy these. Again, like Leslie said, if you like them, like and subscribe, share them around, tell your friends, tell your loved ones. If you have a partner who needs to hear some of this stuff, most of us have a partner who needs to hear some of this stuff. They would be a perfect person to link these things to.
Mm-hmm.
You might watch them together. Hint, hint. So yeah, we'll share them around, and we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Bye
guys.
bye.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye bye.